Hi, everyone. Mason Winfield again with Psi-Friday with Mason on December 15th, 2023. Holiday season is coming, and I figured I might just tell you one of the ghost stories from my life. Sometimes I nickname this one My Christmas Ghost. And, I don't have a lot of supernatural experiences in my life. I mean, maybe once every 5 years, something happens that I think of as, I looked that one over pretty hard, and I just don't see any other alternative but to presume that something supernatural has transpired. So, it's remarkable to me when I do have one. And the way this one developed, it's a Christmas season ghost story. And the way it developed, it's like it happened. And I just kind of filed it as a curiosity. And then years later, something happened that made it fall into place. And I remembered it. And I think would happen this way with a lot of people, because I think a lot of the supernatural experience we have, for a lot of people, it doesn't really register right then. There's nothing to tie it to. And they just think, oh, that was weird. So anyway, I'm a graduate of Orchard Park High School, Orchard Park, New York, beautiful little burb close to Buffalo. It's in the town of Orchard Park is where the Bills play their football games. And every graduate of Orchard Park High School on Christmas Eve got in the habit or was welcome to attend this certain pub. At the historic crossroads, the Four Corners, they used to have a restaurant pub called the Orchard Downs. And the Downs, we just used to always call it, was one of the oldest still standing structures. It had been altered and remodeled and all that, but yet the foundations were 1811. Some parts of it were really, for our part of the world, old. And because it was standing during the settler era of Western New York, and there was so many Native American people living nearby, I'm sure Red Jacket, the great Seneca orator, had attended this pub. I mean, he was not one to pass up a pub. I mean, there had been some heavy hitters been in this pub. Why they let somebody tear it down, I don't know. But anyway, the night was probably in the 1990s. I was teaching school out at the Gow School, and a bunch of my buddies from high school were back in the area. And we met up at the Downs on Christmas Eve, probably 10:30. Place is packed. It was a riot. Orchard Park graduates from all over the world, of all ages, were in there. And I remember hanging out. It was so packed, they had two bars open. And I was hanging out with a couple of my friends. Near one of them, got up to go to the men's room. And on the way to the men's room, I saw a guy I remembered from high school. And, his appearance had always been very distinct. He had, for one thing, he had these crystal blue piercing eyes, just really piercing blue. And he had dark hair. And that's an unusual color combination. My mother had that combination. And he was the school greaser. And Orchard Park doesn't have a lot of greasers. It had hippies and artists and preppies and jocks, and it had a lot of things. But if you were the greaser there, you stood out. But he was a great guy. We never had any problems. And I saw him, and I passed him, and we just kind of nodded. And I came back, and he had been standing sort of at the outside of a ring of guys, maybe 3 deep at the bar. And it looked like he was either waiting for a drink or in conversation. So anyway, I come back to join my friends, and they were talking about who's back, who from our class is back. And I said, oh, I just saw so-and-so, he's back. And a couple of the guys who lived around here looked at me like I was maybe get mixed up. And I said, well, he got killed in the fall. He was in a motorcycling accident, and regrettably, you couldn't have seen him. And I remember thinking, well, yeah, I did, but then I don't know, maybe it's my imagination. Like 20 years later, I was doing interviews in Orchard Park, and I discovered the superstition from several of the people I had spoken to that apparently anyone who had graduated Orchard Park and had died the preceding year in between Christmas Eves was at least potentially likely to show up for that gathering at that pub. And people got in the habit of, certain crowds of people got in the habit of looking for lost classmates at the Orchard Downs on Christmas Eve. And when I heard that, it just all clicked. And I realized, man, I had one of those. And you know, I think the outstanding question is, why hadn't I heard that superstition before? Because I've been collecting supernatural folklore around here for a long time. And I think the reason I didn't catch that rumor before I did is because Orchard Park, it's a very transient place. A lot of people I went to high school with, well, very few of them live around the area. Most of them are gone. That's really different from East Aurora, where I live. There are a lot of those graduates that are really here, but Orchard Park, 8 miles away, was just a really different community. So I think that was one reason I didn't detect the superstition, because I had never looked for it. But at any rate, I think Christmas Eve, Christmas season, it's a really big one for supernatural experiences. It's a very powerful time in the life of American families. So I encourage anyone who's listening to this to keep an eye out and just see if anybody comes back to visit. Best wishes. We'll see you next week.